these subjects, about admission to Lancaster University, about the subjects that we talk about. No such thing as a bad question. But can you please all just check that you have your microphone on mute right now? Please have your mic on mute. So no such thing as a bad question. So please drop them in there and we'll deal with them as we go along. I'm going to be joined by a panel of students who have just left university or in the final year. So they're only 4 years or so ahead of you, but they're now working or about to start work at Fitch, the fund management group of Viva, the London Stock Exchange, FactSet, and Refinitiv, all financial service related companies. But let's start by doing 15 minutes covering, some core concepts, which I think would be very useful for you guys to have an understanding of. So my name is Paul McCormick. I've spent a lot of my life in the financial industry, including investment banks such as Barclays and Morgan Stanley, Clamart Benson and JP Morgan, a lot of the times as a trader. I then moved to an American firm in a role that allowed me to do sales, trading, broking, marketing, and then on to Thomson Reuters, which is a bit like a fintech sort of company, doing fixed income, risk management, and graduate recruitment. I then started a company called Opening City Doors, all aimed about trying to enter this financial sort of sector from a careers point of view. And you might find that website useful. But then I became financial careers coach at Lancaster University.
Right.
Guys, please have your mics on mute. Please have your audios on mute.
Paul, you're muted right now, so we can't actually hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. So why we're here this evening, guys, I guess because you've got to have some sort of interest in a financial career of some kind. You might have questions about what university to choose and what subject choices to do, and we'll cover those right now. Me and the panel, what we wanted to do really tonight was to just show you some of the breadth of possibility of financial market careers. We also wanted to stress the very early focus needed by you to achieve such success, which might be a little bit of a shock in some ways. And we also wanted to touch on the idea of what university you should go to, what subject you should choose, because I'm sure some of you will be thinking along those lines. So a big thing is that investment banking careers, which you've probably heard of investment banks, you may even have heard of a few like JP Morgan or Goldman Sachs or Morgan Stanley. Yes, it's a very interesting sector, and we send students there every single year, but there's only one piece of the job market. It is a bit like an iceberg. You can see the top of an iceberg. Everybody knows about investment banking, but in fact, the much bigger job market around financial market and investment careers is in about 9, 10, or 11 other categories. And these are those categories. Now, we could spend an hour tonight, which we're not going to do, just talking about this slide. But as well as investment banking, you've got the other side of the coin, and that is the people with the money. They're the asset managers who've got money to invest in stocks and shares and other financial instruments. Then you've got private wealth management. Suppose your mother and father won the lottery or sold a business and had £1 million to invest. They'd go to a wealth manager to get that money invested. Then you've got the rather secret of hedge funds who are like asset managers but do very speculative sort of trades. You've got a private equity sector whose job it is to take over one company, get rid of the management, make the company performing again and selling it for a higher value. You've then got two different types of consultants, both financial and investment. You've got a whole sector called credit rating agencies, and we've got a representative from that sector tonight. There's a sector called interdealer brokers who act as middlemen between two banks when they want to do a trade in bonds or in shares. You've got a sector called vendors, which is really fintech, and we've got a representative tonight from that sector. Then you've got your retail and commercial banking, which is your day-to-day banking names that you know, like HSBC, Royal Bank of Scotland, and Barclays. And then you've got a sector which is insurance and financial planning. So you can see how there's so much more than investment banking. Doesn't mean don't go for investment banks, but the sooner you can learn about these other sectors in your first year of university, the more you're going to increase your career prospects. So it's great that you signed up tonight, but why do you need to start thinking about it now? Because hiring in this sector takes place earlier than any other. Stay with me line by line. After universities, normally 3 years, the idea is to join a graduate program or get a graduate role. But to join a graduate program in the investment management and investment banking sector particularly, you need to have secured an internship, which is 8 weeks paid work experience in the summer at the end of your second year. You can't get in without that. So that means you've got to apply for that internship at the very beginning of your second year. Well, all of a sudden that date is actually not that far away. That's 2 years away for some of you. Because investment banks and investment managers, they take 70% of their graduates directly off the second year internship program. And Charlie Apple, who's on the panel tonight, she can talk about that, going into their final year of university with a graduate contract in their pocket. So why do banks do that? Because if you've worked 8 weeks as an intern, it's like an 8-week interview. They know you do a good job, rather than having a graduate who hasn't worked a day in the office whatsoever. So that internship becomes very important. Therefore, your CV at the beginning of your second year, again, not that far away all of a sudden, has to be very strong. But even more than that, investment banks and investment managers run these mini first year internships, which happen at Easter of your first year university, called Spring Weeks. And if you are offered a Spring Week, you have a 50% chance of being offered a second year summer internship at the end of that Spring Week. So this requires a strong CV and application, incredibly, in the first month of your first term at university, as well as a reasonable amount of knowledge about how it all works. Now, if you don't get a Spring Week or you don't get an internship, then it's not the end of the world. There are other ways to get a job in all these sectors that we talked about, but you're not going to get into a Morgan Stanley or Goldman Sachs or JP Morgan unless you have this sort of internship structure under your belt. So what makes a good CV? Already you might be getting some sort of advice on this already, but academic success, but you don't need to be outstanding, but good academic results. I think being fully involved in school and sixth form and university life, whether it's societies, sports, maybe you become a student academic representative in the first year of university, which of there are many. Work experience is important, and that doesn't have to be financial work experience. That can be working in Costa Coffee, Primark, Garden Centre, whatever's going to give you that life experience. Volunteering is another big item. You're not going to get into a JP Morgan without a volunteering item. So if you can do something and raise £400 for cancer research or whatever it is, that's a very good CV line item, as well as being a good cause in itself. But also, have you got anything unusual? Because there are a lot of CVs. There's a lot of good CVs. Is there anything you can do that's going to make you stand out? Like, as it says, black belt karate, football referee, chess, whatever it is, something unusual gives them something different to talk about at interview. Any of you that have got a bias towards technology and programming languages like Python and R and MATLAB, you're not meant to be an expert, but anything you do to develop that interest is always going to look very good on a CV, as would foreign languages. Of course, school sport, public speaking, debating, any of these, it really works as well. Now, you don't need all of these, but you probably need 3 or 4 of them. And so anything you do now is going to help you for that first year at university when you make those applications. This is a pretty good CV. University at the top, followed by school, decent A-level grades, got some work experience. This is the first year CV, got some more work experience, got involved at university straight away, joining a couple of societies. And you can see at the bottom a decent section on skills and interest. You can't get through without having a good amount of good information in there. What about which university should I choose? Well, listen, if you can get into Oxford and Cambridge, fantastic, go for it. But most people don't get into Oxford and Cambridge. You know, if you can get into a top 10 UK rated university like Lancaster University, that's going to work very well. As long as you get into a top 30 university, it will still enable you to apply for the largest financial firms. But I would say one thing, and this, I mean, Lancaster, obviously, which I work closely with these days, they're ranked top 10 in all of the major league tables. So that would certainly tick that box for you. But something else I would say is that, and this might be news to you, a lot of universities, actually, their main focus is on research, studying different subjects and coming up with smart ideas and writing papers on it. That's fine, but that's not very good for teaching. And students, really, their primary goal should, of course, be the teaching standard. So the government started this TEF award, gold, silver and bronze. And it's only, I don't know the exact number, only a dozen or so universities have been given this gold teaching standard. And Lancaster University is one of those. And that's very important in terms of both teaching and career guidance. So try and choose a gold TEF university if you can. So, okay, a lot of universities, this is the management school at Lancaster University. To be honest with you guys, a lot of universities offer similar courses. You know, they all offer an accounting and finance course, all offer business analytics and economics course, all offer management. You're not going to find a lot of difference between the different degree choices at the different schools, whether it's Bath, Lancaster or Nottingham. What I would say, though, just that last line on the bottom is there are a number of universities, and Lancaster is one of those, who do a year in industry. So basically, you do your first 2 years of study, and then your third year is in the industry, and then you come back and do your third study year, but basically it's a 4-year degree. And I think that's a very smart way into the industry, because you do a year in industry like an investment bank or an asset manager, you learn a lot. It also gives you a lot of stuff to talk about at interview when you go for the graduate roles, and people see you've already been selected and hired, and they like that a lot. Not all universities do the year in industry, but Lancaster do. Personally, I think that's a very good way into the industry. Just to say, where is Lancaster? For those that you don't know, it's 2 hours, 25 minutes from Euston Station. I should know because I live just north of London, but get the train all the time up to Lancaster. They've got some fantastic new facilities happening there right now. And so top level facilities, as you would expect. Also, you come to Lancaster, you get me. So I will work with you as a financial careers coach, including individual one-to-one appointments from not only the first day of your first term at university, but I've been working with students before they arrive at Lancaster for these spring week applications. So I have to say this as modestly as I can, but it's the only UK university that has an ex-investment banker as part of its career team. So if you care about this financial world, you probably find that pretty useful. Just to mention, I also teach a 3rd year financial markets module, which is the most practical financial markets course in the country, where I teach our students about trading and electronic trading and MiFID, all the current topics that are in the financial markets today. So our students go to all the top firms, but also to many firms that you haven't heard of this stage in some of those sectors that you are not familiar with. And that's quite honestly where I bring in my industry knowledge to try and align students' motivation and skills with the right opportunity. So this is probably a big question for you. What subject should I study? Well, this is quite a big point, and this might be a bit of a surprise to you. It does not matter. From a financial market hiring point of view, there is no difference between the different management or business school subjects. So it doesn't matter whether you choose economics or accounting and finance or management or business analytics. none of those will give you any advantage or disadvantage into the sectors that we've talked about. They're more interested in what you are as an individual, not your subject, because the first 6 weeks you spend at a firm, they will train you. So you'll be in the classroom for the first 6 weeks when you join any of these financial institutions. They can train you anything. So, you know, looking at these subjects in green that probably all fit into that financial kind of world, you know, a big point of advice from me is the bottom line: do what you think you will most enjoy, because if you enjoy it, you'll thrive at it, you'll succeed. That will come across, and that will help whatever application you're going to make. What about non-business subjects like history, geography, and English? Well, in theory, it doesn't matter. And the investment banks are similar, say it doesn't matter. And indeed, at Lancaster, we've just placed a history student with M&G Asset Management. And we've just placed a physics student with UBS, big Swiss bank, on the sales and trading side. But an interviewer might question your true financial market motivation. He might say to you, if you're desperate to work in financial markets, how come you chose geography? Now, that's a bit of a tricky subject question to answer. You probably can answer it, but it's not an easy question to answer. And the other thing is, when you get hired for these spring weeks, internships, and graduate programs, you need commercial awareness. That means you need to know what is going on in the financial markets, how things work, what happens when a new bond issue happens. And you're going to find it harder to build that commercial awareness up if you choose history than if you chose economics, where you're in the finance society, and that's what you talk about every week. But it can be done, but you just need to work a bit harder if you do history, geography, English, or those type of degrees. But great non-business subjects are STEM subjects. So anything science, technology, engineering, and mathematics fits in very well to this world, and those degrees and students are in demand because employers like the kind of logical way that those students actually think. Okay, so that's kind of all I wanted to say in the initial sort of run through. So please put your questions into the chat box as we go along, and we'll try and answer those questions as we go. So I'd like to invite the panel to turn on the video cameras and join us, and hopefully our panel have all made it through both a long work day and sort of technically. And so just to check, so obviously I've got Evelyn here, I've got Joe here from Lancaster, I've got Charlie here. Pankuri, can I hear you yet? Or Saeem?
Hey, can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can. Yes, I can. Is that Saeem? That's Saeem?
Yeah, speaking.
Right, great. And Pankuri, can I hear you?
Yeah.
Thank you. It's good. We might be, that's great. So we've got all our panel. We might be joined by Charlie a little more, but he was running late all day, so because he's got a very hectic schedule. But let's start off. So maybe I'll start how we look on the camera. I'll start with you, Evelyn, and then move around. You know, can you just start off by introducing yourself, what uni you went to, what subject you studied, which firm that you're at now, what you do on a day-to-day basis, anything like that, Evelyn, if you don't mind.
Yeah, sure, of course. So hi guys, my name is Evelyn. I'm from Lancaster University, and I'm now in my third year studying accounting and finance. And I'm on a placement right now. So I'm doing my third year as a placement student, and then I return for my fourth year. And I'm working at Fitch Ratings, which is a rating agency. Probably not a lot of people are familiar with that. So just to give you like a little background about it, there is like a top 3 like rating agencies in the world, and they rate the creditworthiness of companies and governments, which in like simple terms just means how likely, if you were to lend the money to a company or a government, how likely is it you get your money back with a certain amount of interest. And I'm in the asset-backed security team in structured finance, which also sounds a little bit like Chinese, I I must admit, I also didn't know about it like a lot before I actually joined. If I were to explain structured finance in very simple terms, it is a very complex way, different way of financing. Um, it's different from like traditional lending, like a simple loan. And if you imagine, for example, a shopping center, in order to finance that, you can't really like finance it with a simple loan, but you use structured finance in that way. And yeah,
That's
did I
great to
miss
have. So,
anything?
yeah, no, so I mean that sounds quite complicated in a way,
Yeah.
but you're on this year in industry, aren't you? So can you just
Yeah.
say a bit about that?
Yes, so I'm currently on my 4th week of placement. So I'm still in the training phase, I guess. So I'm right now getting to know the team, like what my team does in general, how the company in general is like operates, and how they like do ratings. And we have a lot of like training courses about like compliance, about different um, softwares we use, like Excel, Bloomberg. Credit rating in general is quite different, I guess, to what, for example, banks do and everything. So they have a lot of like criterias and everything you have to read. So right now it's like a lot of reading and getting to know, I guess, the job.
Okay, sounds good. Sounds good. So how about you, Charlie? Charlie Apple, I believe you're going back into university with a graduate contract in your pocket. Maybe you could tell us all about that as well.
Yeah, is what a university looks like. So I'm in my 3rd year doing finance and economics, which, to put it simply, is basically accounting and finance with economics. So it ties the two together. And I have just finished an internship with and been offered a grad job at the London Stock Exchange Group. So they're most well known for the London Stock Exchange, but the group is actually what's called a global financial markets infrastructure business. And it basically means that they have business in kind of lots of different areas of financial services. So they have capital markets, they have information services, which is where I'm going to be based. So if you've heard of the FTSE 100, that is an index and it's made up of the 100 companies in the UK, and there's different ones obviously in different indices. So that information is put out by LSEG. Then we have post-trade and risk management, which is the London Clearing House. So they're the people that, if a transaction's happening, they put the buyer and seller together and they act as a central counterparty. So I'm really interested because in my graduate position, I'll be based in informational services, but I will also do 6 months in one of those other departments within the group, which is why a grad scheme or an internship is really great, because if you're not sure where you want to be, you'll be able to kind of get a feel for those different areas in the business. Yeah, I think that's great. I'll just wait to see any questions people have.
So Charlie, can I just check with you? So on a grad scheme like that, you don't definitely need to choose what you want to do for the rest of your life, but you're going to have rotation and you'll be able to choose and specialize as you go along. Is that about right?
Yeah, so they're really great with it, particularly like our internship. My internship was meant to be 9 weeks, but because it was virtual, it was only 2. But that was meant to be where I rotated through 4 different sections. So for the graduate position, obviously you're being like, you're actually having to work, you're actually being paid. So they give you a home division. So I'll do 6 months within informational services, and then I will do 6 months wherever my manager thinks I'm best suited. So I don't know yet where that other place will be. And then I will, at the end of the grad scheme, which is a year, I will go into a job in informational services. So I think, like Paul said before with the slides, if you can do an internship with someone, it sort of is like a job interview and they see you. So obviously when I did my internship with them, I was able to give them preferences. And I was very lucky because informational services was my first choice. but they could have said, we think you're better suited in capital markets. And obviously, these people already work in the industry. They're probably, they know where your expertise and where your personality is going to fit well. So yeah, I think when Paul touched on like internships and work experience, I think it's definitely, you need to have them under your belt, because you could even do work experience and hate it. For example, I did work experience with a dentist. Was going down a completely different career route, and I hated it. You might love it, but I hated it, and that's kind of what shifted me now into the financial markets kind of career route, and this is where I really enjoy it. So if you try work experience and you don't enjoy it, please don't think that it's a bad thing, because you've learned that that isn't the thing for you.
Okay, thanks, Charlie. And just see one question in the box already from Edward Andrews about asking about apprenticeships. I mean, there is an apprenticeship route into financial markets. I'd say it's still a new kind of channel, really. I don't know how well it is working. It might be working quite well, but we're really probably focused here on the university route into financial markets via internships tonight and spring weeks for first years. But it is possible via apprenticeships, but that is quite a big subject really to investigate in a very detailed kind of way. Just moving on to Pankuri, would you mind introducing yourself?
Yeah, sure. So hi everyone, my name is Pankuri, and I recently graduated from Lancaster this year, actually, in economics with a year in industry. So I finished my year in industry last summer, and that was at Russell Investments. So they're basically a US asset manager. And during my year in industry, I was working within equities. So kind of the main things I was doing in my role were a mix of kind of looking at macroeconomic analysis and seeing how different political events kind of translate into where Russell was making investments in. Also kind of managing the portfolios that they run in terms of performance. And as well as that, Russell had an arm of funds which basically were fund of funds. And if I explain it in a more simpler way, basically we would hire some external managers as well to bring in their investment insights to our funds as well. So those were kind of the three areas that I was involved in my role.
Okay, that's fantastic. And obviously the males are well outnumbered tonight by the females, and I think that's a good point to make, because this industry is so open to female students now. It's the door is wide open. So Saim, can I come to you, please?
Can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can.
Yeah, sorry, I had headphones and they're not working right now.
Okay.
I can't use them.
Sounds good.
So yeah, as long as you can hear me okay. So
Yep.
Saim, I think I'm slightly older than the ladies here. I graduated in 2018, did a 3-year degree. Just to touch upon the point of what Paul was making about degree subjects, I actually did economics with geography. So initially I started out as a straight econ student, but I think after a while, I think it was the point about what do you find interesting, what elements can you kind of change up your degree. So I decided to carry on my minor, which is something that Lancaster offers. And I went through onto an internship at Thomson Reuters. And from there, I went on to a graduate scheme. So similar to Charlie, I had an offer in my 3rd year into Thomson Reuters. By the time that happened, we actually got bought out by a private equity firm called Blackstone. So a bit complicated, but we got bought and then we got sold to the London Stock Exchange. So I think Charlie's organisation's my parent company, should I say. And I've been working, so I graduated in July 2018 and started working in September 2018. So I've been working for 2 years now. The point about rotations, 100%. So this is actually my 4th team in 2 years, and I'm on a full-time role now. I currently work as a deals analyst at Refinitiv. So as a deals analyst, some of the key things that I look at is firstly about providing insight to the market across financial deals that happen. So if you think about all investment banking deals that happen, my team would actually work on understanding, okay, there's been loads of IPO activity or there's been loads of M&A activity. Is this linked or correlated to another factor, for example? So we'd be looking at trends, figuring out what could be going on. Secondly, I also help with financial media outlets and sales professionals on updating them on what's happening across the market as well. So Thomson Reuters Refinitiv, that kind of area is actually around financial technology and around financial data. So that area is more around providing the financial services or financial markets around up-to-date data, providing them information on what's happening within the market. And it's a slightly different field because you kind of work with the financial services as opposed to directly being involved in financial service transactions, should you say, as well. But it's worth noting that I actually started on a sales graduate scheme and I then moved into something more analytical. So it definitely helps with, I think, getting yourself into a company where you can try out different teams and actually figure out what you want to do, because I was so set going through uni wanting to go into sales, and then a few years later I actually transferred into something a bit more analytical as well. So yeah, I think that's kind of in a nutshell.
Good.
As well.
Good. Again, it sounds like good flexibility, just a question of getting started and then working it out from there in many ways. So it's encouraging to hear, I'm sure, for many people. Couple of questions. Are there opportunities to do placements abroad, which is doing the year in industry abroad? Well, yes, there are, but I'd say the opportunity was more limited compared to the United Kingdom. There's also a question about, let's just see how we go. There was a question about, do you need A-level maths for economics? I think you've got to check each university because there's some where you don't. I actually don't know the Lancaster requirement at the top of my head. Question, what's the best degree for investment banking? Well, we kind of already sort of covered that. You could do any degree at all, but certainly economics, management, accounting and finance, business analytics, anything that fits a bit like a glove. But you can also do it with history and geography and English. So there's no absolute requirements. Is politics, philosophy and economics a good degree? Yes, it's one of many good degrees, absolutely no problems. Oh, here's a question. What are the starting salaries like? Okay, so that's what you all want to know. How much money is you're going to earn? Well, yeah, earning money is good, of course. And I had a very nice car when I was doing a lot of things, but it's more a question of finding the right role that fits you so that you enjoy it and you succeed. But I will give you the answer. You could end up on the lower side of salaries, not at an investment bank, but say a smaller organization, and they might pay you in the first year, say, £22,000 a year, something like that. If you started at a large investment bank, like a Morgan Stanley or Deutsche Bank, they will pay you £50,000 as a starting salary and probably give you a £5,000 bonus. So you're going to have everything in between. Everything between 20 and 50. 50 is obviously a fortune to start your career on. So there's lots of opportunities, but in a way, it's not what you earn in day one that matters. It's what you earn in year 5 that matters. And that means you've got to be in a successful sector and firm that appeals to you and you're succeeding. What A levels are most desirable for finance? Again, it matters in there, that might be useful, but anything else works absolutely at all. Okay, what about if I move it on a little bit? So, and again, I'll start with you, Evelyn, if I can, So if you were starting university first year in a few months' time, as some of you will be, or the very much 12 months away, what would you do in your university first year in terms of careers preparation, kind of knowing what you know now, or even last year's school? What would you do?
Well, first of all, like my biggest mistake, I guess, that I made was not going straight away to the careers team. So like the careers team is there obviously like from the very beginning. So I kind of missed out on that like chance to actually go and see them. I also started studying like international business management, and that was also like a reason why I was still like figuring out where I'm gonna like go into later on. So I only like decided to switch to accounting and finance like after my first year. But yeah, in terms of like starting university, I'd definitely go straight away to careers team, because you can really like talk about your interests, find out like what kind of like career opportunities they are, because obviously they are the experts. Like Paul, he's our financial market expert, and as he already like showed us, there's not just investment banking, but there's so many more careers actually, and they cover so many different like interests. Like if you're interested in like programming, in combination with like finance, like what kind of like opportunities they are. I also would use the variety of like societies. So like Lancaster University, for example, we have so many societies actually there. And especially in your first year, you actually have the time to like really get involved and like make a big effort in like different societies. So we have like, for example, like investment and finance societies. We have an investment fund. um, I wasn't like really aware of those societies, I guess, at the very beginning of my first year. So that would be something I would actually change and really like get involved in, because that's like the perfect time to really get involved, network, meet new people. And yeah.
Okay, that sounds fantastic. And Pankuri, if you were starting your university in 3 to 12 months' time, what would you do now? You know that you didn't know at the time.
Yeah, I'd say looking back, probably I would have firstly like sent my applications a lot earlier than I did. I think I definitely found kind of in my second and third year when I applied for my placement, I felt more prepared than applying early because I had access to the careers team. But I think like given what Paul said earlier, I think even before coming to university, you kind of have it at your fingertips in terms of the timelines of when to apply, what kind of companies you'd be interested in, and kind of the dates there. So I'd say that was definitely one thing that yeah, looking back, I could have sent forward before actually even starting university. Another thing would be, and I just found this through speaking to people actually, was that I mean, I know a lot of big investment banks also offer work experience for sixth form students as well, like internships. I think Goldman Sachs does this Inspire program for year 12s and 13s. So really, if you're kind of interested by this industry, after this event, I'd really recommend looking into that, because I think a lot of people within that institutions, they partner up with schools, so they're very aware of how it works, and I think it's a really good kind of stepping stone before you even started university. So I'd say definitely that's kind of one area to explore as well. And yeah, like Evelyn said as well, I really stress that while you're at university in your first year, there's so many different things you can do. I mean, arguably things will be a bit different given the situation that we are in at the moment, but I do think that in a way that kind of means that you have to work a little bit harder. But I think that in terms of the networks and relationships you'll make, they'll be stronger in the sense that everybody is in the same boat, and kind of all these events and opportunities like societies. I think if you make the most of trying to network with people, they should be really helpful in terms of like job prospects. So, and Lancaster, like Evelyn says, offers quite a lot of different things within economics and finance as well, which help, I think, for applications.
Okay, great, great. Okay, Saim, I'm going to ask you a question in just a second. I'll give you the question in advance so you can think about it. What was your experience like getting on a graduate scheme, considering you didn't do a placement year? So actually, you just think about that one for a second. Kieran, you took part in Young Investment Banker program. It should be in a personal statement. It should be on the CV. You always put stuff like that on those sort of documents. What is a bond trader? A bond trader is, bonds are like loans, but there's so many of them. As a bond trader, you probably trade 300 different types of loans, and you would make a buying and a selling price all day long, and people would buy and sell those loans against you, and you'd either make or lose money depending how interest rate moves in a day, and they can be denominated in all sorts of currencies. So it's a fascinating topic, and too big a topic for right now, I'm afraid. Lots of questions about work experience. So I mean, obviously it's a tough COVID world at the moment, but in a normal situation, as I say, if you get a job, Costa Coffee, Primark, whatever it is, that's working in a cafe, fast food, whatever it is, they give you the life experiences and dealing with difficult customers and having to sell yourself. That's all the work experience that we were talking about. However, the other type of work experience is getting a week at an office in an office or a finance firm, and that is normally requires a favor, and that normally requires a favor of a family friend, or I hate to use the word, but connection, or you network and you find someone who's going to help you a little bit and give you a couple of days in the office. But that's the sort of thing that you want to include. A few questions about mathematics and whether you had it at A-level or not. Basically, and certainly at Lancaster, we take people without A-level mathematics and then we teach them the mathematics in the first year. So as long as you've got the motivation, you're going to be fine on the mathematics subject. Shall I choose finance or economics with mathematics? Do what you most enjoy. There's nothing advantage-wise in terms of where you're going to go after that. Would you say there's demand for jobs in finance in the north? Of course, that there is. Manchester's a big financial hub. There's all sorts of financial planning, wealth management, insurance opportunities in the northwest of England. I've been shown roles where I'm finding it hard to find the right student for those roles. You don't have to go to London or abroad for it. So Saeem, I've given you quite a long time to think about this answer. So what about getting on the grad program without that year in industry? What was your perspective on that?
Sure. So just for a bit of clarification, is it a year in industry versus an internship, or just a year in industry in general?
Well, just how did you manage to sort it all out without doing the year in industry?
Yeah, sure. So I think a bit about what we're speaking about just now. So trying to plan ahead, going into your first year and thinking about kind of the experience you want to do. So when I was in first year, I did debate was a placement year worth doing over an internship. So the two kind of caveats I looked at was they're both trying to achieve the same goal. They're both trying to get you either into the organization or try and get you just some broad experience. The only way I've seen it was, I think a placement year, it would essentially stretch your degree out a year longer. So if you felt that you wanted to go straight into work after graduating and not do an extra year, you could feel that you didn't have that. But I think in terms of getting an internship, it was around a lot of what I did in first year, because as Paul mentioned, there's so much about actually September straight away in second year going to apply to university. By the time that I actually completed all my experiences in second year, I already had the offer. So a lot of the information that they actually took off me from my interview was from my first year. And to be honest, even in year 13, they did look at some things that I did do in year 13, because when you're an interviewer, you try and look at someone in a relative perspective. You look at the last year or the year before. So I think definitely utilising your time in year 13 and the first year of university. A few of what I realised they picked up was, and some of the feedback that I got in the interview was, it seemed like, I'll take it how it is, it said that it seemed like you were somebody who was quite clued up, and actually you could see someone who is quite good at communicating and good interpersonally. So in your first year, try and figure out what can you do to develop some of your soft skills. So being able to speak or being able to communicate some of your ideas across in interviews as well. Think about areas where you can actually work on, let's say, taking part in teams or just keeping up with the news itself. So I mean, yeah, long story short, you don't necessarily need to do a placement year at all, but what you do need to do is be very motivated from the moment you start university to understand what it's going to take to get you that internship. And Lancaster is a good place to give you all those stepping stones, because I know when I came in, I didn't actually have an idea on how to get that. So Lancaster is going to be a good area to actually give you those opportunities as well. Thanks,
Saeem. A question from Diego in Spain. What is the percentage of international students studying financial markets in Lancaster University? Well, the financial markets course is a third-year module. I teach that, and I would say 75% of the cohort is international. So a very internationally focused group, and of course should be very welcome. could technology advancements potentially make many jobs in financial markets redundant? Well, I mean, obviously that's a long-term trend, but depends on the job. If you're doing a straightforward sort of audit job or an operations processing job, of course there's a danger of being automated. But if you're doing a client-facing role or a particular sophisticated piece of analysis, that cannot be taken over by robots. So there will always be an increasing technology presence, but many, many roles cannot be replicated by technology. We've covered that. How beneficial would further mathematics be to an application in finance? I mean, mathematics is always going to stand well in the CV, so further mathematics would even stand out a bit more. I have two options from my work experience: a week in HSBC or a week in EY. Which would you recommend if I want to do in economics at uni? I'd probably go for HSBC because EY is a great firm, but HSBC probably has a perception maybe a little bit harder to get, and it's more banking kind of orientated than EY. How many hours does a typical week in the financial markets consist of? Well, it varies. If you work in a trading role, you're probably doing about sort of 50 hours a week. If you're working in compliance or another, also about maybe 45 hours a week. If you work in a division they call the investment banking division, which is all about mergers and acquisitions, you're probably working 70 hours a week. But what I would say is that investment banking and other sectors, but investment banking is much more balanced than it used to be 10 years ago, both in terms of hours, culture. It's extremely diverse in terms of they want a completely diverse intake. And if you need time off for something, you get time off for something. It's not what investment banking was 20 years ago. Is there any way we can access resources used in this webinar? Yes, there is. There will be a recording that will be worked on, but we're going to send out a bit of an information pack, which we'll talk about in just a second. Charlie, can I come to you because I know you had a bit of technical difficulty. I think you're back with us. What can you say about getting career support from your university and your own experience at Lancaster, if you wish to mention that?
Yeah, no worries. I always have a technical issue. So in terms of getting like career support at university, here at Lancaster within my degree, and I think it's the case with all of the degrees under the management school, although Paul might correct me on that. But I think it's the case that we have a module every single year that is a careers module. And I would say that is kind of like the minimum you should be going to that, because you can actually fail that module. It doesn't look great if you fail careers. But within those modules, we do things like you'll get like presentations about things like elevator pitches, and we also a lot use the website Prospects, I believe, which is a website you guys can go on now if you wanted to look into like different careers. And you can do like online tests on there, and it says like what you're suited to. So it's a module, but it's not like a lot of work. It's just it helps you understand your future career path better. And I actually did find just those like I think it was 2 hours a week for the module. I found that, as I say, the basic, I found that really helpful, and it created like a foundation for knowing where I wanted to go with my career. And then I actually I would just say nag your careers service. It sounds awful, but I'm glad that Paul's nodding his head. Honestly, just nag them. You can email them. Obviously with COVID we can't at the moment, but we normally have like drop-ins where you could just go down to, we have like a little careers suite, and you could just go down there, speak to a careers advisor. I started off speaking to just kind of one of the general careers advisors, who then was able to kind of pass me on to Paul, because Paul was able to help more with where I wanted my career to go. I think Joanna's just put the link, so guys, please check out Prospects because it is brilliant. So yeah, I would just say nag, like no question is too small. Even if you've got an upcoming assessment centre. I think I sent Paul about 5 emails the week I had an assessment centre. I was so nervous. It was my first one. Phone interviews. the careers service can do like mock phone interviews, mock interviews if they're in person once we get past COVID. We can go through like advice on video interviews. No thing is too small to ask, because every little thing can make a difference in an interview. So it's important that if you're worried about something, you're worried about what you should be wearing, you can even ask careers advisors on like advice for dress. So I would just nag them, because it's really nice. And when Paul hears about us all, like, I would say doing quite well, I think everyone on his done really well, and that's really nice. And I'm sure Paul likes to hear that. So don't think that you're nagging someone, because if you go on to get a job, it means they're really good at their job, which Paul is brilliant at his job. So yeah, just don't be nervous to ask for advice on anything.
Okay, sounds good to me, Charlie. So that's the panel. If the panel could just think for a second, I'll give you a second to think about it. In one or two sentences, what would be your advice for aspiring investment bankers and investment managers and all the sectors that we've talked about today? But just before that, I'll just take a couple of questions that have come in. Some good questions, actually. Is actuarial science good for getting into banking? I'd say absolutely, although a lot of people go into the actuary profession, which is all around pensions and insurance and that side of it. So I think you'd have a lot of choice with that type of degree. Quite a specialist degree, I would say. We've got what job roles in finance are not compatible with working from home? That's kind of a really interesting question. So I think what's happened over the past 4 months during COVID is it has accelerated the workplace development that was going to probably take place over the next 10 years. And I mean that quite literally. And what everybody has found is that practically every job can be done from home. That includes trading, includes technology, includes investment. And so there's not a single role that I think cannot now be done working from home. And that is a dynamic that investment banks are thinking. And does everybody need to return to the office? It looks not. Do I need to fly to New York to see a customer for an hour, which is going to cost £8,000 or $8,000 on a business trip? I think those days are gone. So we definitely are going to see some change, even though there'll always be offices and face-to-face. And some people miss the camaraderie of being in the office as well. So some people like that. A couple of other questions. Would natural sciences be a suitable degree? Absolutely. Kind of fits in that STEM sort of subject. There was a question about what do you think is the best growth area in the economy? Or perhaps I can turn that around a little bit. And somebody said, what are the best career areas to focus on? And we asked this question of the head of investment banking for China of JP Morgan. And his answer was he thought wealth management was a really interesting area because generally there is a demand to look after individuals' finances over the next 30, 40 years as people in a way are actually getting richer and richer and living longer. He also talked about fintech. Clearly, that's an important area. And in fact, Saeem, in a way, you could argue works for a type of fintech company. And so that was important. And some specialist research areas are also going to remain very important as well. One question here about what are the ethics surrounding financial markets. So the ethics, financial markets and financial institutions have never been more ethical, because after the 2008 financial crisis, they were almost seen as like the bad boys of society, leading to an economic downturn and unemployment. And now they are such ethical institutions, and they will ask you a couple of ethical questions as you go through the interview process. So they're completely different culture and workplace to work in now, and much more pleasant, I would say, than probably 20 years ago. Okay, the time has come then for the final sort of remarks. I've got something to share with the audience in just a second, but Evelyn, what would be your advice for aspiring sort of financial people on this call?
Yeah, I guess like be hardworking, dedicated, and I guess like financially like curious, because like that is like super important. Like do not want to be like an investment banker or go into finance just because of the money. but because you're like very passionate about finance, like you love to find out like what's going on in the markets and stuff like that, because otherwise like the job isn't for you, because you have to sacrifice like a lot of hours, a lot of like hard work, a lot of energy, and like really like the application process and stuff. You wouldn't like really survive it, I guess, if you're not really passionate about it. And also like the job in general, like it's not like a typical job where you literally just like working like 9 to 5 and that's it, but you really have to like dedicate like your time for it and really be passionate. So I'd say, yeah, like be very like passionate about finance and like know about like your interests, I guess. And also don't concentrate on becoming like an investment banker, but also like explore other career opportunities, because like you might just really like just think finance is all about like investment banking, but it's really not. And there are so many like great other opportunities.
In fact, can I just on that point,
Yeah,
did anybody know about your current sector in the first term of university in the first year?
No, not at all. I don't think so. I think actually only in second year when we had like a financial module, we got like kind of introduced to like rating agencies and their role in the financial market. But yeah, no, like in first year, I think literally anyone you talk about like to finance, they're like, oh, so you want to become like an investment banker or like whatever, you know? Like they don't really know about like other like job
Yeah.
opportunities, I guess. So yeah, like
Cool.
explore it, find out like your interests in the market, I guess. Speak to the careers team, because like as I said, like Paul might help you like discover like other areas you might want to go into.
Great, thank you, Evan. Saeem, what would you think in terms of final comments? You know.
Yeah, sure. So, firstly, don't watch too many movies. I'll get you thinking about something else, no. But in terms of what I had, I think being inquisitive and really go into something that you do actually find passionate and you would actually enjoy to do, just because you don't actually realize, but once you go beyond university, that's it, that's your career, right? And you don't want to spend your time doing something you dislike. On the element of salary, try not to think about too much about starting salary, but think about progression and what you could be earning in 5 years or what you could be earning in 10 years. You could be on 50, 60,000 pounds, but you could be on that for the next 10 years. So you just have to have a thought about what you do there as well. And the final part for me is just don't be afraid to fail, or don't let that kind of really get to you. But one thing you should do for sure is really learn from what you did wrong, why things didn't go to plan, and really go after how you can get better on that note. So yeah, not too many points from me, but just a few that really helped me during university and even my career now.
Yeah, you know, 50 pounds doesn't sound too bad, you know.
I mean,
that sounds like a lot of money. Okay. Pankuri, please, what are your final thoughts, please?
Yeah, so I'd say it's quite important when sort of looking for a job or when you begin a job to obviously research what you're going to go into, but also when you begin working, I think it's very easy to kind of, you think you need to mold into, you know, a certain industry, right, or a certain sector that you've done so much research about. And I'd stress that I think it's quite important to kind of embrace your own individuality when you're at work, and I think it would help not just in the application process, but also as part of just being at work in terms of being a likable person and getting along with everyone. And I think it's quite important to keep pursuing things that you would otherwise do and not feel like you need to kind of, you know, take on a whole load of new hobbies and things to boost your CV and then, you know, forget about the things that make you you. So I think definitely that's something I'd stress is kind of, you know, that will always speak for itself. And then, yeah, I definitely stress like what the others have like generally said, that it is very important to just be really interested in where you're kind of researching, and then I think it will show while you're researching. If you're not interested in it, then it's the time to kind of put it to one side. And linked to that, it's important to look for career options that kind of keep all doors open, I think, because in the next 5 to 10 years, you might not really know which area of financial markets you end up in later on, and how your interests change based on different projects you might do. So It's definitely the case for me over my placement year. I started off in asset management, and I kind of did a lot of work related to kind of portfolio management and looking at implementation, which kind of drove me down areas of fintech. So I'd say it's definitely important to kind of be quite open-minded in your approach. I'd say that definitely helps.
Great, thanks, Pankuri. So last couple of minutes, guys, and they're going to tell you about something that we're all going to send you all. Charlie, last but not least.
Yeah, so kind of I agree with everything everyone said. My main thing is I would say it's great to have goals and have focuses. But I think don't set your heart on a particular firm, because like everyone said, I think it's really important not to lose your individuality, and it might just be that your personality and your values didn't align with that particular company or that particular firm. A lot of them do put up their values and their mission statements, and it's something that I personally would always make sure I read before I even apply, because it might be a great company with this really big name behind it, but if the values don't align with your own personal values, then that culture isn't going to be where you're going to enjoy your job. And at the end of the day, everyone's speaking about salaries and interests, and it's really great to be interested, and it's great if you can make a lot of money in something you're interested in. But if you're not going to enjoy the culture and enjoy your work environment, it'll just affect your mental health too much. So I'd just say, yeah, don't focus on a firm, focus on a goal for yourself.
Okay, sounds like very good advice, Charlie. So, okay, so just to finish, the advice really much tonight is, build that CV now, and as soon as you get to university, have fun at university, but a first-year careers exploration is very much needed. I hope to see you very much at Lancaster and work with you on an individual basis very soon. And what we're going to do through Joe and team, we're going to send you all a City Career Action Pack, which is going to be a very short document talking about all the different financial sort of market sectors that are available to you. We'll also give you a document just saying what you should do on the first day of university in terms of starting building your CV. And we'll also send you a short 3 or 4 page document on these first year investment banking and investment management spring weeks. So you know all about that, and hopefully we can work with you on your application at Lancaster, and we'll send you a link to the Lancaster University prospectus. That's what the financial document is going to look like, but lots of stuff on there for you. So it's been a pleasure to speak to you. I need to thank all the panel tonight for doing this. After many of you after a long day's work. I want to thank Joe from Lancaster and Mutty also. I hope you found it interesting. We know we've got a specialist sort of financial market careers offer at Lancaster. And if you want to take advantage of that, then we're delighted to support you on your own journey. So I'll end the call now, and hopefully we'll see you all very soon, one way or the other. All the best. My pleasure. Thank you for the note.
Bye.
Goodbye all.
Bye.